your guy, Brian Kenny, can show up at 1 o'clock here in Nashville. If you stick around, we're not flying out till 6. Fire the machine up. We're back on because my favorite show, and of course, I've told you all the years watching you on ESPN, Showtime, and everything you've done in your career as a broadcaster, doing the boxing game. You know what a fan I am of your program. And it's funny. Right now, my DVR at home, it's dominated by Dancing with the Stars, Bachelor, and MLB Now. I'm losing out. The kids have taken it over, but MLB Now, as you know, I've been the biggest fan ever since you started the show. I think it's the best baseball show that we got, and it's always an honor to have you on the program.
Thank you so much. Very kind words. It's always nice to hear you. You're always very complimentary, and I'm sorry I'm killing your lunch and delaying it.
Yeah, I'm telling you right now.
My day's starting now, so here we go.
If we were getting, I heard 1 o'clock. I will stick around for my
Thank
guy.
you. I'm honored. Here we go.
Let's promote the big show because we have actually talked about it before. When you do the Hall of Fame stuff for all of us who are Hall of Fame people, and it means, you know, my family background, Bob Elliott was my grandfather. He was the most valuable player in 1947, first third baseman to win the MVP. So a ton of my grandfather's stuff. He's a 7-time All-Star. A ton of my grandfather's stuff's there. So I've been down to the bowels where they bring you out in the surgical gloves. They've got my grandfather's 2000s hit for the bat ball. So I love the place. The backdrop when you guys are in the plaque room doing a show, I think in all of sports, it's far better than the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Done that, but that backdrop that you guys were when you're in the plaque room doing the show, and you're going to be doing it on January 23rd again.
Right. We have Braves, right? Bob Elliott Braves. Am I getting that?
Boston Braves.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't. If I'd known that, I'm sorry.
He was the Wheaties guy in the 40s.
Wow. Big time player. Good for you. We the difference that, you know, each year we do a little bit more from Cooperstown, which is, you know, look, if you can go, you have to go. If you're a fan, you have to go.
A must for any baseball
fan.
Right.
I'm so used to, because I grew up in New York, you know, around New York City. And so I was used to my dad driving us upstate, as we call it, and going to see the Hall of Fame. So I'm used to it my whole life. People around by you, if anybody makes a trip to the East Coast, in this bucolic small village upstate. It's beautiful. Anyway, we go January. Snow is falling every year. The baseball writers have their announcement. We do it. We make the announcement there with Josh Rowich, the president of the Hall of Fame. They're live that night on the 23rd. And this year we're going to have with Jason Stark, JP Morosi, and Joel Sherman's going to join us. So when Greg Amsinger and Harold and Tom Verducci are there on the set in Secaucus, we're going to be splitting the show. They're going to be throwing up to us all the time, and we'll be doing all our hardcore analysis because it's still a very deep ballot. I'm a big Hall guy. I have like down ballot favorites like like Jimmy Rollins. So I'm not just looking at wins above replacement. You know, this is not a war Hall of Fame. It's a good basis. It's a good objective methodology, which, as you know, I pushed for decades. But now that we're there, I'm like, all right, hold on. War is the start. Let's start examining it. Todd Helton could get in. Billy Wagner could get in. I'm very interested to see what type of backing Joe Mauer and Chase Utley get.
Yes.
I think they both could be solid, leading to good things eventually. I don't know if either one gets anywhere near 75%. I don't think Chase Utley is. I would vote for him, no doubt, easy. But it's an interesting ballot with nice infusion of new good players.
I'll tell you, for people in Northern California, Cooperstown is like a little mini Lake Tahoe.
Okay, is that a description?
Yeah, it's like a little.
Not as grand, but beautiful.
The lake's not as big, but it's like a little Lake Tahoe.
You can ski too, but the hills are like this.
I'm kind of back and forth because when you went to bat for Tim Raines, see, for me growing up as a kid in the 80s, the writers got it wrong. Tim Raines was a star player. When you had the All-Star game every year as an expo, Tim Raines was a star. I think the Hall of Fame, when I go in the plaque room, I want stars. I want star players, guys that I knew. When I was growing up, I knew Mike Schmidt. I knew Ricky Henderson. I knew George Brett. These guys were the stars of the game. It's like when I hear people try and make a case for Bobby Abreu, I go, I never thought Bobby Abreu was someone. Bobby Abreu comes to San Francisco to play the Giants. People want to go see Bobby Abreu.
He's a pretty impactful player. We don't have to argue that, but right.
But I'll star.
I'll throw in too. Look, there's a lot of ways of looking at it. I know I can go deep into the metrics and do comparative analysis. That's what we do on the show all the time. We do Cooperstown Justice. But I would just say, like, my first thing, my question or my statement would be, was he great? Like I keep pitching. I did that for Tim Raines and for Edgar Martinez. I go,
Tim Raines was great.
Was great. Was Edgar Martinez good or was he great? And everyone's like, well, he was great. I'm like, so what's the problem? Like, did he do it long enough? Is the next thing. Was Don Mattingly great? Yeah, he was great. He wasn't good. He was great. That was great for 4 years, not great for 10 years.
I agree on Mattingly.
So Mattingly, for me, I'd give him a vote. There's a lot of. I'm beyond. Oh, you've got to do it for 10 years. Who says? Nobody says.
I do want you to be like the best play. Like Mattingly, when I was growing up, Don Mattingly was one of, if not the best player.
I was the best player in the American League 3 to 4 years. If you're the best player in your league, I think, or best pitcher in baseball for 3 to 4 years. I don't need 10. I also don't want 1, right? I mean, there's a difference. Not Dwight Gooden, but Don Mattingly, yes. Dale Murphy, yes. Johan Santana, yes. So I'm more of a peak guy. I'm a big haul guy, and I ask, like, Billy Wagner's on the ballot now, and I always ask people, was Billy Wagner good or was he great? Oh God, he was great. He was great. Look at his run prevention, number 2 all time, not 14 too. So anyway, I can do this all day, but I always ask that question: was he good or was he great? I'm more of a peak guy now. To me, like Chase Utley is easy for me because 6 years he was great. And you say, was he good? Was he great? Was he a winning ball player?
No
all
doubt.
Those things. Like it's obvious, and he's still fresh in our minds. So I always ask people, well, what are you thinking then? Like, sometimes get your head out of Baseball Reference. What did you see? What do you think? And now back it up. If the stats aren't there, one thing. Now, like Bobby Abreu is another case where maybe he's a little more nuanced. Mike Messina was a little more nuanced, right? You have to dig up a little, get under the surface a little bit and look and see, the comparative analysis as to what was his run scoring environment. Did he do things that were a little more subtle? Abreu wasn't like a home run hitter, but he walked a ton. His on base was savage. He had power. Yeah. He wasn't a great defender. He doesn't. For me, like you're saying, are you voting for Bobby Abreu or not? I would say no, right? But
great career, though. I don't want to get up, but he had a great career.
But I'm listening. That's all. It's a fine line. I also like to keep it. You have to keep it exclusive. You can't just say, yeah, this guy's a whole. Everyone, Mad Dog accuses me of like I'm gonna let everybody in. I'm like, not true. You need to keep it exclusive. But I am more of a big haul guy to get more people in.
I just don't want, because I love the Hall of Fame so much. I've been there 3 times. I just don't want to get to a point what we're seeing in the NFL now, where the great players are going, hey, there's a real big difference between us and everybody else. I don't want to see that. And there's nothing wrong with telling someone they had a great career. You just don't belong to have a plaque in there. You can still have a great career, make a lot of money, have a great, but you're not. There's a big difference. By the way, I love a great host always rides different waves. And that's something that I've always loved about you on MLB Now, because you could be staunch on certain things. Then you can say, I'm kind of changing. You sense the flow, and it's good because it also depends on who the guests are. I like how you.
Thank you. You get it.
You work the room. You got to work the room, right, baby.
Well, thank you. By the way, you get it, right? You get it. And I hear people say that. And if people watch the show now, we really have evolved because now the industry is speaking our language.
Correct.
We're speaking the industry's language. So we don't have to fight about, do you know how valuable walks are? Do you know how valuable it is to work in the count? Yeah, we know. But we were fighting those fights 20 years ago. Now we've swung to an area where every single day on MLB Now this year in the season, we did a thing called baseball-y plays of the day or unbaseball-y plays of the day, because I maintain that where is the game being won and lost? And look what happened this year to teams like the Mets and the Padres, let alone the Cardinals and the White Sox. It's like, why did teams that have a lot of talent kind of fall apart or underperform? And I think it's a lot of things that are just into the mix on the physical field. And it's kind of team coordinated defense, desire on offense, on the base paths. So we started doing things like, hey, missed relay. The guy got to second, so he wasn't on first. Later, ground ball, then fly ball, he scored. He shouldn't have scored. He should have been on first, but you missed the cutoff. Now he's on second. So all these little, what I call baseball-y things, because I used to say, I hate to get all baseball-y on you, but let's get baseball. Yeah, baseball men, grunt, grunt, grunt. But yeah, fundamentals make a big difference in the teams. I found, you'll like this, the same guys and the same teams were making it either on baseball-y plays or unbaseball-y plays. Hassan Kim of the Padres was making baseball-y plays every day, every week. His team was missing cutoff men every day, every week. The White Sox are making unbaseball-y plays all the time. If my producer said to me, Zach Neto of the Angels had a play last night, I didn't even have to ask if it was baseball-y or unbaseball.
Yeah.
It was baseball-y. He's a baseball-y guy. He's a rookie shortstop for the Angels. But he's so heads up that it was like, heads up guys make heads up plays. By the way, that leads to winning baseball. So I think you have to evolve with the times and the culture. And hey, where is it out? What is Moneyball? What is sabermetrics? It's finding the difference between perception and reality, exploiting that. What's the competitive advantage? Where is everybody zinging? It's time to zag. That's what it's all about.
And the showdown, a good addition to the show. Was
like
that your idea?
Yeah, that was. They wanted a little more debate.
Yeah.
So we have a showdown. And sometimes I know my producers complain that I agree with people too much. But like, I don't want to get out there and bark at people.
You don't always want to be the guy who's doing
Yeah,
this.
no, it's like too much. I know one time at the end of one of them, we have Hannah Kaiser on the show all the time. She's great. And at the end of it, we go to break. I said, oh, thank you, Hannah. We go to break, and we stop down. We're about to go back to the set. And she goes, I think I won that one. I go, you realize we're not winning and losing, but to her, it was like, no. She goes, we're winning and losing. And she goes, I said, well, what makes you think I'm competitive too. I said, what makes you think you won? And she said, well, you agreed with my points. I said, but that's a sign of my flexible mind that you made good points and I changed my view. Doesn't that mean I'm the winner? Yeah. So if I hear a good point, I don't want to fight it just to fight it. So a lot of times I'm glad you see that I'll say, okay, that's a good point. Maybe. And I like, Mad Dog actually does that too. There are times where I'm hammering on something historic and he goes, yeah, it's a valid point. I probably blew that one. When someone says that, you go, oh, okay. Like, we can stop yelling at each other then. As long as we're thinking and we're changing, let's do it.
When we bring Mad Dog on, our fans, because he rips Oakland, and then our fans go nuts, and I go, you got to listen. I've been in terrestrial radio for basically my entire career, and he is in the Radio Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
He is a really big deal. And I wanted to get to this because it's a big part of the meetings right now. It's the reason why we created A's Cast, and we started audio. Now we have video, and why I haven't totally left terrestrial radio because I still do all the stuff for our games, but this is why we create what you're seeing with the RSNs, what you're seeing with terrestrial radio stations, AM specifically, they're dying. The new wave of how we reach our audience. I can watch MLB Now right here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how you get to your audience now. This is why we created this, and it's kind of sad, but we know it's coming, and why we're seeing a lot of freeze here. I just want your take on it because we're not sure teams are either losing their RSN money. They don't know what it's going to be like at the end of this month with the bankruptcy and Diamond Sports and Bally's. And there's teams who are they're terrified of what's going to happen with the cable cash.
Look, it could be. I think more so than that. I don't think teams are afraid to spend. I think this is a difficult class to make assessments on, to find a true valuation on players. My word for the free agent market is mercurial.
Yes,
because I'm mercurial because I want to be kind.
And you give the definition of
right.
it.
Oh, you see it. Oh, good. Mercurial. Like my word of the summer was malaise.
Like a teacher, you give your word of the day. Yes.
I just want a specific.
The teams of malaise.
But it's like I don't want to say this guy was great, but this year he stinks, or he's great, and the 2 years before he stunk. But I can say Cody Bellinger, he's been mercurial, right? But that means his ceiling is sky high. He was the best player in the National League for 1 year, and then he was lost for 2 full years lost. 1 year mediocre, last year good but not great. So what do you pay that guy? So I think everybody that goes out in the market and their agents have this feeling of my guy's should get a $300 million contract. And again, I see it from a GM's point of view. You have to be fiscally responsible. And that doesn't mean being cheap. That means I have to be concerned with players 19 through 26 on my roster. I want to get more money for them. I'll have a better team if those guys are paid and good. I'm not as worried about number one. So when it comes to Blake Snell, like what do you pay Blake Snell? Eduardo Rodriguez, which guy are you getting? Even Josh Hader is down to like 50 innings a year, 50 something innings a year. So he's great. I'm not saying he's good. He's great. He's all time. He's fifth in a park adjusted ERA in the last 30 years. And that's Rivera and Papelbon and Kimbrel ahead of him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So he's truly great. At the same time, I'm like, okay, what are you going to pay that guy? If you're paying him, that's other people you're not paying. I think that's more of it. There might be other things. Look, the Padres made their huge push. Peter Seidler has passed away. So now that push has to, come back a little bit. They've never been playing in the top 3 in payroll, so they have to get back. And the Mets, I think, are also trying to figure out which direction are we in. They have some nice young players. They should also be, if David Stearns, I think, is going to do it the way he wants to do it, it's like, hey, take your foot off the accelerator for a little bit, and it leads to greater health. So I just think it's a lot of that. Teams would be willing to spend, but I mean, the Ohtani thing, like the numbers are so high. all-time high, I think everybody just is kind of backing away and saying, look, as you know, there's only so many aircraft carriers you can have. You know, if your port is stacked with aircraft carriers, you have very little flexibility and maneuverability. I'll continue the analogy.
Your Navy's got to have some destroyers,
right?
Some subs,
amphibious landing, things. You need, landing craft. You need the Marines there. You need small arms. You need large. You can't just have, hey, look, we had all this money. We got 5 aircraft carriers. They're all sitting there, and big time players, like if an aircraft carrier is Juan Soto, eventually he's going to be playing like Giancarlo Stanton. It's going to take a few years, but he's going to get there. Everybody gets bigger, heavier, slower. And now that guy's under contract, sucking up huge amounts of your money. And that guy is rusted out. And you have all these rusted out aircraft carriers sitting in your port. And suddenly you have no maneuverability. Your opportunity cost is what's really getting you, because you couldn't get that first baseman. You couldn't promote this guy because that guy's sitting there making big money, and you're praying that he starts to earn it. So I think GMs now, look, all 30 are smart. It's not that long ago, there was like 22 were smart. There were 10 were smart. Then 25 were smart, but there were still some others that were like, spend, get stars. We need stars. What you need to do is have a winning baseball team, and then people will flock to see you. And that's sustainable. So I think most GMs now are looking at this, and there's a little sticker shock, and I understand why.
Let's end on this. And I go back. So for years, I worked in the NFL. I worked for the Raiders. I'll use my football and take some football and bring it into baseball. How much for you in boxing? I mean, we all remember Floyd Mayweather Jr., one of the greatest, back and forth on television. Boxing is an in-your-face coverage. Baseball, usually it's kind of like, Al Leiter. And, how much have you used your boxing and you bring that into baseball, kind of the way I've done with football? You kind of bring that in to kind of mix it up, and it gives variety and a different style sometimes in coverage.
I find it, I don't know what the crossover is, but I feel it. Again, I'll probably come off on the air as a bit pugnacious. So perhaps that's part of my personality. I used to box. I used to box the Catskill Boxing Club in the 80s, way back
You're not
when.
afraid to bring it. Right. Baseball's not used to that.
So you have to be a little more confrontational. But look, it does help you understand. Like in baseball, I saw that there's a definite correlation between the data and the physical action on the field, right? At the same time, and even Bill James will say this, there's a lot that the data does not capture. It's a complicated, messy world. And boxing for me was always like, everyone's into punch stats and do this. I'm like, get away from the data, smell the fight. It's the fight is, there's more to the dynamic than looking for punch stats and how many punches you threw. There's certain things work rate that are valuable, but I was never the numbers guy with boxing. I don't know if you noticed, like other play-by-play guys will give you the comp stat numbers. I'll do it if it's like, hey, he normally throws 26 jabs around. He threw 40 last round. Like, all right, that's something. That's work rate. That's different. But other than that, I'm like, no. Get your head out of the books and watch the fight. Yeah. Baseball, there's such a data set, and the sample gets so large that there is greater understanding through it. But you do also have to realize, again, as I'm trying to, evolve, that, hey, what happened to the Padres? What happened to the Mets exactly? When, especially the Padres in particular, like had good numbers. You know what I'm saying? Team starter ERA was quite good. I think it was number 1 in the league for a while. Relief pitcher ERA is good. Their offense was pretty good. They had good defenders. They're like, so what's wrong? They're not weak in any area. There's nothing wrong. But something's wrong. So that's always
the record.
Right. There's something not happening. So yeah, I kind of like look to that. Like, I'm always looking for evidence. Frequently it's the data. Often it's something else.
He's the best. He's my favorite on MLB Network. We were like, hey, stick around for him. Of course, we're going to stick around. MLB Now, it's the best baseball show. There's no comparison. And remember, January 23rd, Baseball Hall of Fame, when you're doing the show and you're doing the hits from the plaque room, it's second to none.
You're very kind. Thank you so much. I always love coming on your show.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays.
To you too.
And we'll talk to you in the new year.
Get this guy some eggnog. Get out. He's can we go? Brian Kenny.
Well, you're coming up also on MLB Network.
Yeah, I'm on. What am I on the air? 3:00 local time.